What's up, everyone, and welcome to this unboxing of this Toy Biz Spider-Man Classics figure of Venom. The figure comes packaged in a card and large bubble with a Symbiote blast accessory. The top of the card features artwork of the Amazing Spider-Man. The back of the package features directions on how to use the accessory, as well as how to activate the movable jaw. There's also a brief write-up of Spider-Man. Here's a close-up shot of that write-up. If you would like to read this, just hit pause and do so now. This was a 2005 release, and I got a great deal on this figure, primarily because the card and bubble are not in great shape. As you can see, the bubble is starting to yellow and separate from the card. This figure comes from the old Spider-Man Classic line, and the front says Venom with Symbiote Blast. There's a hole in the back of the packaging that allows collectors to try out the movable jaw. To be honest, it's not that impressive and it's kind of difficult to see. More on that later in this video. And now let's bust open this package and see what's inside. Here's a close-up of the Symbiote Blast accessory, and we get a sculpted and painted Venom face on one end, and the opposite end attaches to the figure's forearm. There's a button on the back of the accessory to activate the firing mechanism, and as you can hear, that came out with some force. This is definitely not something that you want to aim at your face. And here we see the Lethal Protector, free of the package and ready to rumble. 20 years later, this remains one of the best Venom figures in this scale. It reminds me of a smaller version of the Toy Biz 12-inch Marvel Icons Venom. That being said, there are areas that could have used improvement, so let's have a closer look at the loose details now. Let's have a look at the lower body, and this figure is massive in terms of musculature. You can see just how huge the calf muscles are. This figure has the midfoot hinge and double jointed knees. Likewise, the quadriceps are huge, but I really appreciate the way that these have been sculpted. There's a rough kind of sculpting that makes it look like the symbiote is flowing over human anatomy, and I really appreciate that. There's no paint on the lower body, but that's how it should be. Now let's have a look at the torso, and here we see the spider symbol. The paint application on this is magnificent. I really appreciate just how exact this line work is. And this is the button that activates the movable jaw, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But I really appreciate how massive the latissimus dorsi is here. And there's excellent sculpting on the pectorals and the abdominals. My only complaint is that there's a gap in the spider symbol when the upper torso is articulated. Here's a closer look at the arms, and the definition here is incredible. In Venom's comic book origin, Eddie Brock had tried to deal with the stress of his life through weightlifting, and when he bonded with the symbiote, it made him a massive, scary version of Spider-Man, and that is definitely reflected here. This figure has the bulging muscles of a serious powerlifter. Now let's have a look at the head sculpt, and this is nasty, and I mean that in a good way. That's exactly how it should look. There's the long tongue and the extended lower jaw. You can see all of these individually painted teeth and the flesh around the mouth. And here's a look at the eyes. There's some shading on these for a layer of realism, and I really appreciate that. So here's a closer look at the lower jaw movement. When this button in the back is pressed, you can see the lower jaw move ever so slightly, and I don't understand why so much work went into something that is so minimal. Toy Biz was very innovative with their Marvel figures when they had the license, but this feature really doesn't add anything to the figure. I wish that Toy Biz would have put time and effort into head articulation instead of the jaw movement. Speaking of movement, let's look at the articulation. We get the mid-foot hinge, there's ankle pivoting, the feet move backward and forwards on the ankle joints. There are double jointed knees, so it's possible to get the figure into a running pose. There are ball joints in the hips, and that allows the figure to kick forward that far and step back that much. It's also possible to get the figure into a deep side kicking pose. As far as the torso goes, there is waist rotation and upper torso swiveling. My figure feels a little loose in this area, so definitely don't put pressure on that area if you have a figure that's similar. The figure has finger articulation, and that's something that Toy Biz did that modern lines really don't do. Obviously, there's movement here at the wrists. There are single jointed elbows, and you can achieve this angle with them, but they won't go any further due to the size of the biceps. There's also bicep swiveling, and there's a magnificent amount of movement here with the shoulders. And you can get the figure into this type of pose, and I really like that. And it's possible to do a 360 with the arms at the shoulder joint. Unfortunately, the head does not move at all. It doesn't even move side to side, and that is certainly disappointing. Now, if I remember correctly, the head is supposed to articulate, and what may have happened here is that the plastic has settled over time. But the last thing that I want to do is try to force a joint on a 20-year-old figure, so I'll have to settle for a static pose with the head sculpt. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this review. Make sure to check out my other content. And until we meet again, this has been the Emerald Enthusiast, and thanks for watching.